All right. You guys ready? It's gonna be fun. All right, so let's do a really quick intros. So I'm Conor. I was a co-founder of Tribe and then at CreatorIQ for a long time and now launching a new brand. And then I have the distinguished honor, the CEO of Phlur, which is one of the best performing social media brands in the world on fragrance. Absolutely killer. And then Felix, who's one of my longest friends and is the CEO of Pixi Beauty, which I believe is, north of 100 million in revenue and one of the pioneers in the influencer space. He actually convinced me that influencers were a thing when I was doubting it back in the day, which was fun. So this is gonna be a good time.
Definitely.
Well, let's start at the top. So, Felix, you've been a CEO for 4 years and started at a very early age. And Elizabeth, you've been a CEO or GM now for 7 years. Let's just talk about what that's like, right? For other people, what do you think are the things that lead to success? What is your personal approach? Just talk me through that.
Oh, wow. My personal approach, it's interesting. I think first and foremost, you have to understand how to build a winning team. I mean, we can't do any of this without a team. And so when I came onto Phlur, that was definitely my first priority, is making sure that across the board, I had the best of the best on the team. And then, I came from a marketing background, so does Felix. I think that certainly helped me, like understanding the importance of building a brand with a strong point of difference, and being laser focused in terms of the strategy and the initiatives. I say all the time to my team, like if it doesn't make the boat go faster or further, we absolutely shouldn't be doing it. And I think that's been a big part of our success today, is that ability to focus.
And what was transitioning from kind of the CMO role to kind of running the brand? What was that transition like? What was different? What are the things you liked that you didn't like? Yeah.
It's a great question. In ways it's challenging to go into a generalist role because you don't really know how to spend your time. Sometimes in the very beginning, you're figuring it out. And the answer is pretty simple, actually. It's just you lean in wherever your team needs you to lean in. Like wherever you don't have resources or there's a bigger challenge to tackle, that's where you have to spend your time, which is very different as a CMO because you're very clear, like I have to, build awareness, drive a compelling 360, launch new products, where it's not as clear when you're in a GM role, so there is always that adaptation period. For me personally, it wasn't a big leap because I had always worked in organizations where the marketing person was the center of the wheel. Like I started my career in large CPG at Nestle, and even as a marketing manager, I was like the mini president of my own company, and I always had to figure out ways to motivate the cross-functional team and balance priorities. So I think that experience really led me to where I am today as a CEO.
That makes sense. For Felix, you started as a CEO earlier than most people do in their career, right? You're in your early 30s. I'm curious for you how your approach has changed. I was kind of an idiot in my early 30s. Like, how has that changed?
Same.
How has your approach changed from then till now?
I don't think my approach has changed a ton. I think what I do has changed a ton with the business growth. When I joined, we were a handful of people. That means you're doing the strategy, you're executing, doing everything in between. I was doing the graphic design, I was running the social media, I was kind of doing everything in the beginning and setting it all up. And then that's kind of grown into being able to build teams, build systems, build processes, and then you're plugging the gaps and kind of being a blocker for your team and trying to be a supportive leader and kind of help them be the best they can be. And so it changes, I think, from being very much an executor to being a little bit more of an architect and an organizational architect and kind of building the teams that can solve the problems that you hopefully frame or opportunities.
I feel like that's been one of my biggest struggles as a leader is like, I like to be a doer. Like I like to do things, like that's just in my nature. And like building the structure and the framework and the scaffolding was like not what I was like either passionate about or good at. And so we actually made a pivot, John and I, when we were running Tribe, where it was like, hey, you're gonna run all internal ops, I'm gonna run all external. And it actually was, I think, worked really well for us. So applaud to you guys for being much better at that than I am. So the other thing I've always observed about the CEO role is it's like any other thing. Whoever's at the top is the one like, oh, I could have done it better. Like, oh, if I was doing it, I would have done it this way. And, shit rolls uphill, right? Like whatever the biggest problem is, if like If the manager can't solve it, the director can't solve it, and the VP can't solve it, then it's like, okay, now it's the CEO's problem. So for you guys, how do you guys manage that like day-to-day stress of being the end stop for all major problems? And what is your, how do you handle that?
Gosh, I don't know. I wish there was a magic answer to that. Does anyone know the answer? If you do, let me know. No, I think that the truth of it is just the ability to be able to compartmentalize. And I think I always feel like, what's the worst that's going to happen when these challenges, when the shit does roll uphill? What's the worst that's going to happen? And so you always sort of compartmentalize and just tackle it. Tackle it one piece at a time, and you focus on what you can control. And I think that you have to just pull your ego out of those situations, if you will, and just do the best you can. And honestly, usually the best you can is really damn good. It really is.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, like, what is the worst that can happen?
What is the worst?
It's like, make the decision, move on. If it doesn't work, we'll adjust. There's very few one-way doors. Like, you go in, you can't change it.
Exactly, agreed.
And also, we're selling beauty products. We're not saving the world. We're not saving lives. And so I think having it with a little bit of sense of humor makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think when you're in the moment, it's easy to take things really seriously and get really stressed. But I feel like as a leader, like, I remember we had a moment, this was in 2018. We lost access to Instagram data, which turns out pretty fucking important. And it was just a disaster. And John, my co-founder, was gone for a couple weeks, and he was CEO. And so it rolled up to me, and I was moving a little too fast, a little too stressed, and it was that's not what the team needed in that moment, right? What they needed is take a beat, it's gonna be okay, let's think about this long term. So it seems like that's something you guys both try to do.
Yeah, and I think, yes, everything rolls uphill, and if the people you've hired to solve the problems can't, it comes to you. But I think you have to understand that that's a privilege, and pressure is a privilege where people trust you to help solve the problems or help them get them on the way to solving the problem. So I don't take that responsibility lightly. It's about helping the team be the best they can be again.
Yeah, for sure. So Elizabeth, you just went through a fairly public big deal, right? So Phlur was acquired by TSG. Crazy. They've acquired Summer Fridays, and they had acquired Hutta in the past. I can't remember, who was the other one they just recently acquired?
Well, they have Hemp's as the other brand in their portfolio.
Yeah. So most of the audience has not gone through a major acquisition like that, and you've been through it a couple times now. So talk them through what that process is like, how you manage it. Obviously, you can't let the team in on all of that while you're doing it, and it's not very much work, I don't think, right?
No, it's really easy. Just hire good bankers, and then you're set. No, I'm just kidding. How does the process work? Well, I think the most important thing is that if you know that you want to have a liquidity event or you want to have a transaction, building that exit strategy very early. And I can use the example of Phlur since we're talking about the recent acquisition with TSG. When I came in, when I was hired, which I joined April of last year, and we had an LOI from TSG in 13 months. It was kind of insane. But when I joined, everything that we did, the team did, it was laser focused on that moment. I mean, even hiring my team, I would tell you, when I hire people, I was thinking, not only do I need them to go high-low and be very proficient at their job, I need them to have the executive presence to sit across from an acquirer, to really represent and be able to articulate very clearly what the strategy is and why Phlur is special. So a lot of the work, I mean, it's a tremendous amount of work once you're in diligence, but the earlier you work on your exit strategy and the more time you spend doing that, I mean, everything my team would tell you, we were thinking about, well, what does this mean when we're in diligence? How is this going to look? How are these numbers going to look? Where do we want to be? And then this environment, it's very tough to be acquired. I think we all know that. And so you have to be as perfect as you can be with a very, very sound business, knowing everything is focused on long-term sustainable growth of the business, right? It's like it can't just be like, we need to pop our numbers now. This is building for long-term growth, because anyone who's going to do diligence with you is going to be able to poke holes and figure out if that's not the case.
Yeah, that's interesting on the kind of hiring team, knowing this is going to happen. Like, we need to be ready for it, right? In terms of the actual team itself.
There was a way, I mean, I would tell them, like, do I envision this person sitting across from, I see To the people guy, sitting across from Carol Hamilton. Like, are you going to be able to answer her questions? If not, you're not right for my leadership team.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Felix, your brand is a famously family-started brand, right? Family-owned brand. Your mom started the brand. And then I think your father was a CEO for a little while, and then you took over as CEO. And I think what's interesting for me is you came in and grew the brand really rapidly once you came along. And so now, you're in this world of the Phlurs where you're a big brand, you would be a target for an acquisition by a lot of these private equity firms or strategics, but you guys have, held off of that. I'm curious, do you guys ever think about selling the company, or is this like, we're gonna run this for the next 100 years? Like, how does your family think about it?
Well, I'm hopefully not going to run it for the next 100, but no, for us, we get a lot of inbounds here and there, but that's not really interesting for us right now. We look at being independent as part of kind of our superpower, where, in this short-term world, people are always looking for the week sales, month sales, quarter sales. They have, board reporting meetings, all this stuff, to Wall Street, to the market, to PE. And we can think a little bit longer term. We can, do investments for 5, 10 years. We can spend time investing in innovation, R&D. We can invest in our people with a longer timeline. And I think that's super important for us. And while we still have the energy, know what we're doing, and like what we're doing, I don't think there's a reason to take a partner. And, it's me, my mother, my father, a couple of uncles, a couple of aunts, a sister, and so we're very much a family business.
Are there any challenges around being a family business? Obviously, that's something that I think gets a lot of people's interest. Like, how do you guys kind of balance family versus, the business side?
For us, we love working. We love being with each other. We always joke that if we didn't work together, we probably wouldn't see each other. And so I think it's super important to enjoy the people that you're with. And for us, I think it's a benefit because we don't have to be polite. You don't have to kind of do all this stuff what you have to do with, I would say, normal people. We can kind of get down to brass taxes, fight it out, and figure out the best way forward very quickly, as well as there's generally not any ulterior motives, so you're not second guessing why somebody's doing something or somebody's not doing something. And so I think it removes a lot of the friction from kind of normal day-to-day if you work with some family that you trust.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, obviously, this event's about influencers, right? And I think part of the reason I wanted you two on stage was that you guys are amongst the best influencer marketers in the world, right? If not the best, right? So you're both up there. Kind of Felix really pioneering it, and then you guys perfecting it in a lot of ways. So talk to me a little bit about what's your approach. I'll start with you, Elizabeth. What was your guys' approach that you think led to the kind of success that you saw? Obviously, you had Chriselle Lim involved, who's a large influencer, but there's a lot of influencer brands that don't get to be number 1 or top 5. And then Felix, on your side, you've been in this space now for 10 plus years, really kind of zoning in on it. How have you seen it change? How's your approach changed? So maybe start with you, Elizabeth, and then go to Felix.
Yeah, that's a tough question because, there's not a particular playbook, I would say. I think with Phlur, we were very early on with TikTok, and the team did an amazing job with building out our affiliate program with TikTok. I think taking a step back from that, it starts with the brand, of course. You have to have a true, authentic brand with a real point of difference. And in the case of Phlur, we were looking to not just come in and win. We really wanted to disrupt the category, and that is what we did. I think you guys have seen this. There's been the democratization of beauty, starting first with color and then in skin and then in hair, and now it's happening in fragrance, where people are not shopping the category the way they were historically, buying one legacy fragrance once a year that came from a campaign of a celebrity on a horse on a beach that ran for 2 years. Like, that's not what we wanted to do. We almost thought about Phlur, I think, as more of a color brand in a way, or a fashion brand. Like, come in and do a lot of drops, really engage with the consumer, and start this flywheel of innovation coupled with how we engage and activate our community. So I mentioned like TikTok Shop, we were very early and it built this beautiful creator network. And then I think that we've thought about all the other verticals the same way, whether it's paid partnerships or other organic love, is like, it's easier to do whenever you have something to say, and you can say it very authentic, and you have a very clear point of difference, which I think in all of those cases Phlur does. So I think just to summarize, it really was the fact that we use this flywheel that combines innovation with how we engage in our community, and then we added in authentic storytelling. So for any of you who may not be familiar with Phlur, that is a very, very big part of our DNA, is that it's not just inspired by these beautiful, high-quality juices done by world-renowned perfumers, but we're doing these very authentic and real stories that are coupled with it. And that really works very well with our creator community, because then we can pass the mic to them and they can do their own true authentic story, if that does in fact resonate with them, which I think most of the time it does, because we're doing storytelling around universal truths. Right, like Missing Person was inspired by Chriselle's divorce and her missing that warm body next to her. And so being able to kind of create a fragrance that helped address what was going on in her life, and then telling that very vulnerable story. In that case, Chriselle held the mic first, and then we passed it to our community. It was incredibly beautiful to see what our community came back with. And what's interesting is that happened in 2022. People are still talking about that original story. Yeah.
And that was a relaunch too, right? They had kind of bought that brand, relaunched it, and
Correct.
Really cool to see that happen.
Correct.
You don't see that very often.
Yeah, the brand's 10 years old. For any of you guys who don't know much about the business, it was one of the very first clean fragrance brands, and that was really the ethos, was just clean. And obviously today that's table stakes. You can't just hang your hat on that positioning. And so the business was bought in 2021 as an asset sale, relaunched completely, all new juices, all new packaging. Chriselle was brought on a co-owner, and then the relaunch happened.
Love it.
Yep.
So I forgot my question now, but Felix, it's back to you.
How has changed since 2015?
Yeah.
So I think not that much has changed. I think the same basics apply. I think back in 2015, it was new, it was organic, it was wonderfully kind of unpolished, and everybody was just transactional, trying to figure out what's going on, trying everything, throwing everything at the wall. And at that point, really, you couldn't do many mistakes. Pretty much anything you did was more or less successful, or at least you learned, and then you could adapt very quickly. I think now it's a lot more commercial. There's a lot more competition. It's very crowded. There's a lot of noise everywhere. And so it's about being able to cut through that noise while still staying on brand, authentic, and real. And I think for us, we invest a ton in kind of the longer term relationships. We try to build trust. We try to build confidence with the creators as well as the consumers. And I think that insulates you a little bit from some of the day-to-day changes, whether TikTok decides to change the algorithm, or Instagram does something, or the reporting goes away for Instagram. I think if you have those longer-term relationships based on trust and kind of confidence in kind of the partnership, that's what insulates you and can really help you go far. And it's pretty much the same as before.
Do you have different approaches based on the channels, like TikTok versus Instagram versus YouTube? Obviously, TikTok wasn't really around or meaningful when you first started. Yeah, talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's different audiences and demographics that sit on the different platforms. And so depending who your brand's for or what you're targeting, you can use the different platforms in different ways. But we like TikTok a lot because you can see a lot more of actual conversion, whereas I think the others, we use your wonderful EMV a lot to kind of track, and I think you have to adapt to each platform, and they have their own analytics and their own goals, and you kind of have to take a little bit with a grain of salt and focus on the underlying fundamentals. And as long as you do that, I think you'll be successful. So
Elizabeth, we've talked about Chriselle a little bit, and one of the challenges of having like a big influencer as the face of the brand is sometimes it can be viewed negatively by acquirers as like being too, concentrated from a risk perspective, or you're in the risk of it just being like, oh, this is Chriselle's brand. It doesn't stand alone, right? I think you guys did a really good job of like having her be involved, but Phlur stood alone as a brand itself. How did you guys find that balance, and while also making sure that you're still leveraging, the incredible presence that she has?
Yeah, thank you for recognizing it. It was very deliberate, truly. I think Chriselle was one of the original fashion content creators. She's one of two that I ever followed, so it was just serendipitous that we now get to work together. But I think it is a perfect scenario that we have right now, because Chris, I think about her as influencing the influencer. So she's not a traditional founder in the sense that she's involved in the day-to-day of the business. She's really there as the face of the brand. She brings the fashion element that I was talking about, the cachet of the brand, because it's a very approachable brand with our pricing strategy, but it's also still very elevated, very elegant, in the same way that Chriselle is. So we use her very deliberately, again, to influence the influencer, to sort of be that face of the brand, engage with our Sephora sales associates, because she's very, very good with people. But we didn't want to overexpose her. We didn't want her to be the pitch girl. Like I always say, I didn't want her to be the Gwyneth Paltrow to Goop. Like that's not who we are as Phlur, because at some point Chriselle's going to want to go do her own something else and not have to be tied strictly to Phlur. So it's really kind of leveraging the best of her to bring the humanity to the brand without overly relying. Because what we found in our research, is we did a lot of extensive research, as you can imagine, going through a sale process, is that only maybe less than 10% of our consumers even know Chriselle. That's not the motivator. And you could look at other brands like Huda at Kayali, that number is much, much, much higher, right? And we wanted the brand to be able to stand on its own two legs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to, right?
Yep.
In order to survive, or in order to have long-term success, I think it's really tough to be so tied to one person.
Yes.
So Felix, on your side, you guys have had a number, you mentioned long-term partnerships. How do those relationships evolve for you? And what would be, if, Chriselle is at one end of being a brand founder, what's like the deepest partnership you've had, or partnerships you've had?
We've had a few, and so I think it was 2017 we launched our Pixi Pretties program, which was 4 capsule collections with four creators, and kind of that's the, I think, deepest relationship we have, and we kind of have done a few different iterations of that. But that's when they come in, they sit with Petra, they create their own dream products and dream collections, and then we kind of co-brand it. So Pixi Plus, for example, at Miriam NYC was one of our first Pixi Pretties, and I think that's as deep as it can go for us at this point. But I think there's lots of steps to get there, and so it's from just gifting, taking them to events, doing trips, doing collaborations, and kind of co-creating kind of the next future. And we've been seeing a lot of creators these days help brands being the creative directors or helping consult on their influencer program. And so I think that's a really interesting evolution of what's happening, where creators are being brought in to build the program and consult on what is really interesting for creators on the front end as well. And so we're starting to play around with some of that as well.
Yeah, I'm launching a brand, right? The beer brand, and we've thought about like, who am I going to hire to run social? And it's like, I mean, these people have done it, right? Like they're running their own accounts. They know what kind of content works. Clearly, they have demonstrated that they are effective at growing an audience. Like, why wouldn't I hire them versus hire somebody? Sure, maybe they're smart, they're really smart college graduate or whatever, but they've never actually created content. Like, this is better validation than that. You know what I mean? Have you started hiring any creators or started working with them in that way, or thought about it?
Not exactly in that way, but I think it's a really good point, and you're right. They've lived it. They're kind of they run their own little.
They've proved it, right?
They're entrepreneurs, and they have that entrepreneurial spirit. So I agree with you. I think that is a very attractive quality to have. But no, we haven't done it to the extent you're talking about.
I'm for sure going to do it. For sure going to do it.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think we're just about wrapping up. We got about a minute left. I want to thank both of you for coming on. I think you guys are both amazing. The brands you built are incredible. Congratulations on the sale. Congratulations on the non-sale. And
Thank you.
well, you just keep to run the ship, right? And yeah, thanks everybody for joining in. That was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Conor.